Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm going to relate. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Once upon a time, of all the good years in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting-house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather. It had not been light all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighbouring offices like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug! Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose?" Scrooge, having no better answer ready on the spur of the moment, said, "Bah!" again, and followed it up with, "Humbug! Come, dine with us tomorrow. Good afternoon." "Nay, Uncle." "Good afternoon," said Scrooge. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle." His nephew left the room without an angry word notwithstanding. In letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let two other people in. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up a pen, "it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time." "Are there no prisons?" asked Scrooge. "And the union workhouses?" "Many can't go there, and many would rather die." "If they would rather die," said Scrooge, "they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon, gentlemen." Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened. The cold became intense. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting-house arrived. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?" "If quite convenient, sir." The clerk smiled faintly. The office was closed in a twinkling. Scrooge went home to bed. Who are you?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. Do you doubt your senses?
"Because," said Scrooge, "a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats." "Mercy," he said. "Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?"
I wear the chain I forged in life, replied the ghost. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Scrooge trembled more and more. "Hear me," cried the ghost. "My time is nearly gone. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Expect the first tomorrow." The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the dark night.
Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn aside. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" asked Scrooge.
I am.
The voice was soft and gentle. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded.
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
"Long past?" inquired Scrooge.
No, your past.
"Take heed." It put out its strong hand as it spoke and clasped him gently by the arm.
Rise and walk with me.
"Good heaven," said Scrooge, clasping his hands together as he looked about him. "I was a boy here." Scrooge, recognizing every gate and post and tree. "These are but shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost. "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still." Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. Let us see another Christmas. Why, it's old Fezziwig, bless his heart. It's Fezziwig alive again. Time grows short, observed the spirit. For again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears, which sparkled in the light that shone out of the ghost of Christmas past. "It matters little," she said softly. "All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man." "I was a boy," he said impatiently. "Tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now?" She left him, and they parted. "Spirit, show me no more," said Scrooge. "I told you these were shadows of things that have been," said the ghost. He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that it looked upon him with a face in which in some strange way there were fragments of all the faces it had shown him, wrestled with it. "Haunt me no longer," Awakening in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, Scrooge lay upon his bed, the very core and centre of a blaze of ruddy light which streamed upon it. A strange voice called him by his name and bade him enter.
Come in and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present,
said the spirit.
Look upon me.
"Spirit," said Scrooge submissively, "conduct me where you will."
Touch my robe.
It was a remarkable quality of the ghost, and perhaps it was the pleasure the good spirit had that led him straight to Scrooge's clerks. "And how did little Tim behave?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. "As good as gold," said Bob. Bob's voice was tremulous when he told them this, and trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. At last, the dinner was all done. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth in what Bob Cratchit called a circle, meaning half a one. "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. "God bless us, every one," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. "Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live."
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
"Oh no, kind spirit, say he will be spared.
If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population."
Scrooge hung his head to hear his own words quoted by the spirit. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind and thinking what a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged, to hear a hearty laugh. The ghost grew older.
Our spirits' lives so short. My life upon this globe is very brief.
Forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts.
It might be a claw for the flesh that is upon it.
was the spirit's sorrowful reply.
Look here. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both and of all their degree. But most of all, beware this boy. For on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Have they no refuge or resource?
Cried Scrooge.
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come,
said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with its hand.
You are about to show me shadow of things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us,
Scrooge pursued. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it.
No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. When did he die? Last night, I believe.
Why, I thought he'd never die.
What has he done with his money? Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know.
Scrooge knew the men and looked toward the spirit for an explanation. Quiet and dark beside him stood the phantom with its outstretched hand. It made him shudder and feel very cold.
Merciful heaven, what is this?
He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare, uncurtained bed. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head.
Spirit, he said, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go.
Still the ghost pointed with an unmoved finger to the head.
I understand you, Scrooge returned, and I would do it if I could. But I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power.
The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet, and as they went along, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house.
Ah, poor Tiny Tim. My little child,
cried Bob.
My little child.
The hand was pointed elsewhere.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, said Scrooge, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be? Or are they the shadows of things that may be only?
Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh, Spirit! Oh, no, no!
The finger still was there.
Spirit, I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future.
live in the past, the present, and the future, said Scrooge. I don't know what day of the month it is, said Scrooge to himself. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his sterling. What's today? Today? Why, Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day, said Scrooge to himself. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. He dressed himself all in his best and at last got out into the streets. He had not gone far when, coming on towards him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting house the day before. "My dear sir," said Scrooge. "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes." "And will you have the goodness?" Here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Oh, bless me." "Thank you," said Scrooge. "I'm much obliged to you." In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. "Fred, will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in? It is a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. But he was early at the office next morning. "Hello," growled Scrooge. "What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time. It shall not be repeated." "You are?" repeated Scrooge. "Yes, I think you are. I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am about to raise your salary." "A Merry Christmas, Bob!" Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not lie, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.